see no evil. It was a day the Oklahomans would have played to forget. It was the worst car accident they could imagine, and they were right. They were right in the thick of it. The collision involved more than 1,100 vehicles. The injured lay everywhere. Several people died, okay? But they survived. During the collision, Mr. felt his mind switched to overdrive, and a surge of fear and anxiety, the desperate search for an escape route. The chaos in his mind paralleled the chaos beyond his windshield. In the days that followed, he began having terrifying flashbacks. Nightmares awoke him regularly in a cold sweat. He felt wired at work and couldn't concentrate. He was easily startled, recoiling at the sound of loud noises. The anchorman's reactions represent the two extremes of a spectrum used to classify a person's response to trauma. The couple agreed to participate in a short study. In contrast, didn't feel anxiety during the study. Her heart rate remained steady, and she reported feeling extremely numb and frozen while reflecting. Psychological trauma is perhaps the greatest threat to the human sense. Psychological trauma, sense of self. It can destroy the will to act, relegating the physically healthy to sit idly in their beds because of psychological paralysis. In depression or grief, it haunts veterans with PTSD. It can even nullify the will to live, as it can tragically lead to suicide. Or alternatively, psychological trauma can result in the feeling of dissociation from oneself. In psychiatry, there is a spectrum of I think I had that before, that I just want to stay in the bed for days. I don't want to see anyone, especially Chinese. I have no interest in other people. For example, in the interpersonal disorder, people feel detached from themselves and their surrounding, as if they were just watching the world rather than experiencing it. Yeah, but I'm not watching it. I'm just have no interest in it. In Chinese, dissociative conditions usually result from emotional trauma, and like the trauma that causes them, they were extremely difficult to bear. To feel separated from the world, to constantly feel as if you were watching from afar, seems like a cruel curse. I don't think so. Dissociation, similarly, I think that is a genius and a special talent can do. Emotional anti-dissociative identity disorder is a tendency to switch back and forth between formerly disconnected aspects of personality. When reimagining the car accident, perhaps this explanation seems plausible on the surface, but is there any psychological? Is someone dissociative disorder? However, there is no obvious brain damage. In someone Emily never fell on her head, or I fell on my head and suffered a car accident. She certainly never had his brain cut in half. Yet, her identity. How can you divide a mind without physically slicing the brain? The fragment of mind. What happens in the brain as a person cycles between multiple personalities? While the volunteers were hooked up, when the subject were their natural personalities, their brain activities looked like that of someone experiencing a dissociative state. The activity was blunted, reminiscent of Miss Angel's dissociative reaction after her car accident. If the switch occurred, however, several brain regions suddenly ignited on the scan. Evelyn never had brain imaging to confirm whether such findings applied to her, so we can only hypothesize that her personality divisions were reflected in her neurology activity. In fact, alternate personalities even have different reactions to the threat. to the threatening unconscious stimuli. In the exam, neurologists showed the patients with dissociative identity disorder images of angry faces using backward masking. If you remember from our previous chapter, backward masking is the technique by which images are flashed so briefly that we do not consciously see them. Yet the image exerts effect on the unconscious using FR. If it's true that each alternative person have different and unique access to our emotions and memories, that could suggest a neurological basis. What's more, the unique way in which dissociative identity patients process memory and emotions appear to shape the anatomy of their brains. The laws of brain plasticity dictate that frequently used areas of the brain experience neuronal growth and get bigger. Neglected regions of the brain experience neural atrophy and shrink. In theory, if you were to quarantine a fraction of your memories and emotions, cutting off access to the involved neurons though those brain regions should gradually shrink over time due to underuse, have shown that this is indeed the case in people with dissociative identity disorder. When compared with control, the hippocampus is smaller on average. Not all dissociative hippocampus not only do the alternative personality exhibit reduced brain activity in the memory and the emotional region, but activity pattern is also reflected in the brain's physical structure. Because the emotionally traumatic memories are accessed only by the haunted personalities, which seldom emerges, the brain regions that store those memories become neglected and shrink in size. What we see that can be repressed progress forcibly remembered. We wonder whether they can split apart because access of one personality but not another. Is that the idea that multiple systems within one brain can have different access on memory isn't entirely new. Multiple systems within one brain have different access to memory. In fact, we need to look no further than the habit and non-habit systems in chapter habit and non-habit systems. The habit and non-habit systems in the brain use different forms of memory that are stored and accessed in different places. When the preoccupied driver is using his habit system to steer, he remembers how to drive just fine because the habit system uses procedural memory. However, because the habit system has no access to academic memory, the preoccupied driver forgets that he has to pick up a gallon of milk on his way home from work. The research from this reason is still in its infancy. Concrete data are limited. The findings, okay. However, there may be another way to draw out the alter egos. What if we could from the outside bring forth the haunted personality without inducing stress while she was hospitalized? Something happened to Evelyn that at first glance appears to challenging the very concept of multiple personalities. There is another chapter of his story. Back at the hospital psychology ward, Evelyn and her alter egos were having their eyes checked, each identity. After speaking with for a while and testing her vision, one of the examiners said, "Switch and let us talk to Sarah for a few minutes." Hesitated, she is scared. After some encouragement, more mature voice emerged, replacing Kim's. "I'll talk to you. I'm feeling better since Kimmy is my friend now. It was hard for me to give her a hug. It was scary. Did you notice what happened there? Not acknowledge each other's existence. How did they know about each other if they were separate conscious identity who don't share thoughts or memories? Could not have known that Sarah was scared. How could she have known who Sarah was in the first place? One of the defining characteristics of incarnation is that the alternate personalities are are unaware of each other and do not share memories, yet somehow hypnosis breaks the barrier, granting the characters access to each other's thoughts and inclinations and even allowing them to interact. For this reason, hypnosis is one of the main treatment options for dissociative identity disorder. It allows for the traumatized alter ego to emerge in a controlled environment. Hypnosis helps soothe patient, helps get to the root of the trauma, and can even help merge the alter egos to rebuild one single personality. Okay. To help merge the alter egos to rebuild one single personality, it certainly helped Evelyn. After hypnosis, he said, I feel better. It's like trying to put a jigsaw puzzle together, putting the pieces together, and I feel like the first piece is there. Can also worsen the symptoms of dissociative disorder, reinforcing the construct of multiple personalities. For that reason, some psychiatrists subscribe to the belief that the condition does not arise alternatively internally, but rather is induced by therapists who encourage to acknowledge these alter egos and talk about their respective feeling, giving credence to the bizarre idea that they exist. Another interpretation, however, is that dissociative identity disorder is a true illness that arises internally, but does so although through a mechanism neurological similar to hypnosis. If you remember from the previous chapter, it is believed that hypnosis works by focusing a person's attention on a certain idea or vision. This subject, guided by the hypnotist, focused so intensely on this single chain of thought that he ignored the rest of his perceptions, like someone concentrating on one conversation at a cocktail party. He tunes out the rest of the The same neurological pattern appears in dissociative, which also a state in which we accept a vision of the world by focusing on one set of ideas to the exclusion of others. Okay, that's me. I always can concentrate and forget everything else. After years of trauma, her brain tried to protect the integrity of her identity by focusing attention away from its troubling aspects. Perhaps hypnosis was the mechanism of this process. His mind created a mental state that was at once hyper-focused and ignorant, excluding swaths of mental experience from meeting with consciousness. The difference is that hypno is the external suggestion of the hypo that guides subject's attention and focuses his imagination. In dissociative disorder, however, the threat comes from within, generated by the unconscious system. Given all the reasons we discussed, many psychologists have concluded that the identity disorder as Evelyn's case makes clear, and compartmentalizing the mind after trauma is not the most precise process. It has side effects. When the brain attempts to quarantine harmful emotions or memories, part of the self goes with them. That's why the feeling of dissociation is so unpleasant. The unconscious system has effectively broken off a fragment of the self unconscious system has effectively broken off a fragment of the self in order to protect the larger whole of human identity. Luckily, that fragment tends to be small. Perhaps that's why alternate personality are often immature younger characters. Younger characters, even Otto, King, and Sarah, were ages 4 and 10, respectively. They don't have access to the brain's higher cognitive powers and years of accumulated wisdom. Through hypnosis, evenly doctors, that's me. I always think that if those bad happenings after I was in high school don't happen, that I would just be younger. Evelyn's doctors were able to draw out each other's her self-ego at identity emerges, it came with not only a different personality and behavior, but also a unique visual acuity. Was legally blind. He couldn't travel without her seeing eye dog. Doctors have come to the conclusion that there was something anatomically wrong with her optic nerves. Yet how is it that when her alter ego inhabited her mind, all she needed was a pair of mild prescription glasses? Mild prescription glasses, as we see, the process of dissociation excludes more than just the traumatic memories from consciousness. The process of dissociation excludes more than just the traumatic memories from consciousness. It takes part of the self with it. Wow, that's so bad. The process of dissociation excludes more than just the traumatic memories from consciousness. It takes part of the self with it. But suppose the unconscious were to go even further, cutting off access to a great portion of the brain. Could it suspend perception itself?